In just 1 week, four countries made moves that quietly rewired the global balance of power. India ditched the dollar, China weaponized rare earths, the US hit back, and Africa claimed its own voice, all in the same news cycle. Different stories? Not really. It's one pattern, a global system shifting in real time. The dollar's dominance, supply chains, even who controls the narrative, all being rewritten at once. Welcome to Think BRICS. We are break down the economic and geopolitical moves shaping our world with the eyes of the BRICS nations. I am here to walk you through four major developments from this past week that signal significant shifts in how global trade and power are being restructured. Today we are covering India's Yuan payment for Russian oil and what it means for international trade. China's sweeping new rare earth export controls, the US proposal to ban Chinese airlines from Russian airspace, Ethiopia's launch of the Pulse of Africa media platform. So let's dive in. State-owned Indian Oil Corporation just made payments in Chinese yuan for shipments of Russian oil. This is the first time India's largest refiner has done this. Why does this matter? Since 2022, India has been buying massive amounts of Russian oil. Previously, these payments went through a complex system involving US dollars or UAE dirhams before conversion to rubles. Now, traders are requesting direct yuan payments. This eliminates an entire conversion step. It reduces costs. It reduces exposure to US financial infrastructure. The context here is important. India and China had serious border tensions, but after Modi and Xi met at the BRICS summit in Kazan last October, things have been warming up. Direct flights resumed between the two countries after being suspended since 2020. Meanwhile, the US has been pressuring India. Trump imposed 25% tariffs on most Indian imports back in August. So, what's India doing? They are choosing the path that makes economic sense for them. On October 9th, China announced sweeping new export controls on rare earth elements. Let me break down what they are doing because it's significant. Two new announcements. First, any foreign company selling products that contain Chinese rare earth materials worth 0.1% or more of the total value now needs a license. Here is the kicker. This applies even to goods manufactured outside China that contain Chinese rare earths. Second, China is banning the export of technologies related to rare earth mining, processing, and production without government permission. Why does China have this leverage? They control nearly 70% of global rare earth mining and 90% of global processing. These materials are critical. They are in your smartphone, your electric vehicle, advanced military equipment. A single F-35 fighter jet contains 900 pounds of rare earths. A Virginia-class submarine contains over 4.5 tons. China is essentially mirroring what the US has been doing with semiconductor export controls. When the US restricted ASML from selling chip-making equipment to China, they were using export controls as geopolitical leverage. Now China is doing the same thing with rare earths. Some analysts say this gives China veto power over advanced semiconductor supply chains. The question isn't whether this is fair or unfair. The question is what happens when the two largest economies engage in tit-for-tat trade restrictions. Just a quick note for you before we go any further. This channel depends on people like you. We are not funded by corporate interests. If this analysis helps, you can support us here or on Substack. You can also help us with a like, a comment, and sharing this with anyone who wants to understand real global power shifts. Right, let's move on to our news, which is pretty fresh and controversial. The same day China announced those rare earth controls, the US Transportation Department proposed banning Chinese airlines from using Russian airspace on US routes. Here is the situation. After Russia started the special military operation in Ukraine in 2022, the US banned Russian planes from American airspace. Russia retaliated by banning US and European airlines from Russian airspace. But Chinese airlines, of course, they still have access. This creates a massive competitive advantage. Air China, China Eastern, China Southern, and Xiamen Airlines can fly shorter, more fuel-efficient routes to the United States. American carriers have to take longer routes around Russia, higher fuel costs. Sometimes they can't even make certain routes work economically. Some US airlines told the Transportation Department that direct East Coast to China flights aren't feasible without Russian overflight rights. The US proposal gives Chinese airlines just 2 days to respond before a potential ban takes effect in November. But here is a question worth asking. Instead of banning Chinese airlines, why not lift the restrictions on Russian flights and return to open travel? Think about it. If the problem is competitive disadvantage for US carriers, there is another solution. Removing the Russian airspace ban would give American airlines the same routes Chinese carriers have. It would lower their costs, make East Coast to Asia flights viable again. But banning Chinese airlines, that could backfire. China could retaliate by restricting US carriers from Chinese airspace or reducing their landing rights. American airlines do significant business in China. Delta, United, and American Airlines all operate routes to Beijing, Shanghai, and other major Chinese cities. Those routes are profitable. A tit-for-tat escalation could hurt US carriers more than help them. The timing is notable. This announcement came immediately after China's rare earth controls. These moves and counter moves are escalating quickly. Now let's talk about something different but equally important. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed just launched the Pulse of Africa media platform. Africa has 1.4 billion people across 54 nations. Yet most global media coverage of Africa focuses on poverty, conflict, and instability. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed just argued that this constant negative framing is demeaning and dehumanizing. It affects investor confidence, it shapes foreign policy, it influences how Africans see themselves. The Pulse of Africa platform aims to tell Africa's story from African perspectives, to highlight the continent's economic opportunities, cultural heritage, and entrepreneurial energy. This isn't just about media, it's about who controls the narrative. Africa is building the African Continental Free Trade Area. Digital innovation is exploding across the continent. Major infrastructure projects are underway. But if external media only shows one dimension of Africa that shapes global perception and policy, Ethiopia, as a founding nation of the African Union, is taking the lead on this initiative. The platform is still small compared to the scale of the continent, but it represents something important. The idea that nations and regions should have the power to tell their own stories. Do you think media representation affects economic and political outcomes? How important is narrative control in the modern world? Let's zoom out. 4 stories, 1 week. India choosing yuan over dollars for oil payments, China leveraging rare earth dominance, the US responding with airline restrictions, Ethiopia launching an African media platform. These aren't isolated incidents. They are part of a larger patterns, de-dollarization efforts, resource nationalism, trade war escalation, and the fight for narrative control. If you found this breakdown valuable, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next analysis. The global economic system built after World War II is under stress. Not collapsing, but definitely shifting. New trade corridors are forming, alternative payment systems are emerging. Nations are reassessing their strategic dependencies. We are in a period of significant restructuring. The direction they take will depend on the countless decisions that governments, businesses, and international institutions will make in the coming years. What's clear is that the next decade won't look like the last one. These shifts affect trade, investment, technology access, and geopolitical stability. Understanding them isn't optional anymore, it's essential. Drop your questions and perspectives in the comments. What story here surprised you most? What do you think happens next? Thanks for watching.